Hey, what's up everyone? Blake Daly here, and I'm glad to be back to bring you more value. And I've been absent for about a year or so making these videos, at least consistently, and I'm starting to get back into it over the last month or so because I realized that I missed it. And on top of bringing you guys value through the things that I've been through, it also allows me to debrief my own experiences and learn through teaching. So I really enjoy it through both of those perspectives. And over the last year, my business has really put a hold on my time because it's been growing and we took on a lot of projects all at once. Then we had a lot of hiring to do, systems to create, and it's just honestly learning lessons to learn. So my time was just eaten up by that, and it was busy, it was stressful, but in retrospect, it was actually really rewarding because we developed an awesome team and the business has been operating really well. And one of those projects in particular is what I want to talk to you about today. And this was the first hotel conversion that started things off and led to creating Adventure Stays, the company where we buy and renovate and then operate boutique hotels and short-term rentals. And this one in particular, I own myself, and it was the precursor to my partner and I jumping in to this model head on. And then we bought 4 together, so now we have 5 total. And just a little recap of where we are and how we got here. So in February of 2021, right around the time of closing our first apartment complex with some partners, including Jake, who's my partner in Adventure Stays, found this little 8-unit rundown motel in Fort Walton Beach. This is what I'm going to get into today. And this place was really ugly. It was in bad shape, multiple code violations, just not well taken care of. But I saw the potential it had. I knew from running my own multi-unit Airbnbs that with 8 units on the property, it could be something really, really special. With a little bit of work, but it really turned out to be a lot of work. So I raised some money and I bought the thing and then started the renovation in February of 21. And because the numbers looked so great, I was really excited about the deal. I talked about it at the real estate meetup I hosted in Panama City Beach. Also talked to some agents that I was networking with at the time and just knew around there. And then pretty soon I had another deal in my lap. This one was 15 units and that one became Seafoam Suites, one of our current hotels in PCB. And then because I'd analyzed a few deals like this, I was seeing the price points and potential returns far better than the multifamily deals had been looking at prior. I started looking for more of them and found another one on LoopNet, and this one became Bahama Breeze, another one of our current hotels. My partner and I, Jake, at the time, were debating putting both of these deals together and doing both. And I think he had this chip on his shoulder, which, you know, in retrospect, I love, and he wanted to bring more to the partnership. And it turned out to be great because he found another 14-unit deal in South Lake Tahoe in California, and this became the Moose and Maple Lodge. So we packaged all 3 of those deals together as one opportunity, funded them together, and bought them all within 2 months between June and August of 2021. And after getting 2 projects done, we're working on finishing the third. And while still working on the first one in Fort Walton, the one we're talking about today, we got another lead on a 20-unit hotel in South Lake Tahoe. We ended up buying that one in March of this year, putting us at 4 hotels in 2 states, totaling 67 units, plus the 8-unit in Fort Walton and my residential short-term rental portfolio in Panama City. So now we own and manage 5 boutique hotels, plus my personal houses and Jake's behind his house for 85 total units. So to manage this, we had to build out our business to be able to effectively manage all the units and all the guests, you know, staying in them. It's a lot of demand. And over that year, we hired and we trained and we had a full in-house team. And then I have property managers and assistant property managers, maintenance and e-concierge that handle the back end. We have a manager of that team, a guest relations manager, and now an operations manager that runs the day-to-day of the business. Including all of our cleaners who are W-2 as well now. We have about 30 employees, and with growing our properties and team, we're on track to do around 2.7, maybe between 2.7 and 2.8 million of revenue this year. So it's been a big year, but it all started with this property in Fort Walton Beach. So let's dig into that because it's a doozy. So this property, like I mentioned, is 8 units. It was in less than stellar shape, like bathroom drains ending in the dirt on the back side of the building and water lines on the outside of the wall within the units, like going right past outlets, you know, big shocking hazard. And just different kinds of haphazardly put together tile, like on the same wall, but different tiles. And some of that was laid with concrete instead of mortar. Like it was that bad. So my plan was to do a big renovation on it and furnish it and then rent each room as a short-term rental. And because it's commercially zoned as a motel, I'd have no problem with nightly rentals because that's what the property is actually set up for. And this is actually what we look for in all of our properties because we're insulated from that regulation that normal short-term rental investors are always worried about, like ruining their ability to do nightly rentals, because those regulations are set up for residentially zoned properties to preserve the neighborhoods and keep like house prices affordable. So like the communities and the planning and zoning department specifically are concerned about houses turning into short-term rentals and then disrupting the neighborhoods and contributing, to higher home prices because investors are buying in them, or buying and turning them houses into short-term rentals, taking them off the market as normal rentals or just as affordable homes for home buyers. But this property was ideally perfectly set up really to renovate and turn into a boutique hotel because it had that zoning. So a little tip there for when you're looking for properties to buy. So the part of my plan that didn't work out as well as intended was the renovation. Once I bought it and started the demolition, we found a lot more problems than anticipated and had to do a full gut renovation. The problem with this, other than the obvious like cost implications was that in the state of Florida, anything over a 50% remodel is required to meet all of the new code requirements. And in Florida, those commercial code requirements are pretty thick. Most of these pop-up requirements were not expected at the beginning, like I didn't foresee them. Things like ripping out a lot of the framing and replacing them with treated studs, and then treating up to 18 inches for termites, and then putting in a fire sprinkler and the alarm system, just to name a few of those things. And then we also took down the entire front wall of the building because the doors and the windows weren't standard sizes, and we had to get engineering for that, and built back up. All of these new requirements added cost and time to the project. And the city of Fort Walton Beach definitely didn't make it easy. They added requirements of their own, put the project on hold while they reviewed and debated and like what they're going to do with it and what they'd let me do with it. And the first time in the summer of 2021, it took them 2 months while who knows what was going on. It's city government, so probably not a lot. And I work in the government in the Air Force, so I know how it can go sometimes. And I say that from experience. And there were contractor troubles. The contractor I had originally hired to do the whole project was a residential contractor, which I found out after the fact because I didn't look up his license before hiring him. And he said he was a licensed and experienced commercial contractor, experienced in commercial renovations, and I took his word for it. But that was not the case. So I made about every mistake in the book, from hiring bad contractors to managing their work. But I was also hit with like those COVID delays, which affected a lot of renovators at the time, and city building department issues that I just couldn't have predicted without doing a renovation of that scope before or in that city before. So it really was like a perfect mix, perfect cocktail of issues that all hit at once. And I do have a couple main learning lessons I want to break out for you guys that I wish I would have known beforehand. It would have saved me months and months of time and probably hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the first one is do not rush your due diligence. I had 3 weeks from getting under contract to close the property, and that was due in part to some of the rigidity of the seller. And in the time I had to find a contractor, get the property inspected, and find the money to close, I kind of skimped on screening and hiring the right contractor because of that, and it cost me, headache and time, definitely money. So don't rush into hiring because it will bite you. All right, and the sub point on this is look up the contractor's license before hiring. So make sure they're actually licensed to do the work you need, especially with a general contractor who's going to be have his hands on a huge project. Had I done that, I would have saw that red flag and looked for a new contractor. I felt pressured because we were at the end of the due diligence period, and I felt that I had to have somebody in place by the time the property closed so I could get the start right away. But looking back on it now, if it would have been really beneficial to delay starting the project in order to find the right contractor. Also with your contractors, like the money I had spent to redo what the first contractor did wrong and I had to pay to get redone totaled around $80,000 to $100,000, all because I wanted to go fast. So don't make that same mistake. And the last sub point here, do not sacrifice quality for speed, especially when it can hurt you, which most of the time it can. All right, number 2 here for my takeaways is seller financing is great, but don't do it with a squirrely seller that has the potential to make your life a lot harder. I didn't know it at the time, which is really my own fault, but the seller also owned the property behind mine and stayed complaining about everything imaginable that only someone like that would. And this was for a full year and a half. And when it came time to refinance, he materialized issues that weren't related to the refinance and then delayed the closing and cost me legal costs that wouldn't be necessary when working with a reasonable person. So don't do business with shady people just to get into a deal. Learn from my mistake. All right, number 3 is research the building codes and the requirements applicable to your renovation. This one I spoke to above, but again, do your research beforehand. I ended up doing all my research after the problems or maybe because of the problems, and learned a lot, but most could have been avoided or at least dealt with swiftly had I done the work up front. And I did learn a ton from that in retrospect, and it's super valuable now and gives me the confidence and the experience to do bigger renovations, but it didn't have to be learned the hard way. Point 4 here is to structure your contracts with contractors to incentivize and penalize. What I mean is make sure you have provisions that incentivize on-time completion, like an early completion bonus or something like that, but also include provisions that penalize the contractor for busting the timeline. Like I usually put a dollar per week to compensate for the cost of delaying the project, because every day or every week that goes by costs you extra in holding cost and extra labor and an opportunity cost. So once you have that, then stick to it and have an attorney in your state actually review the contract to make sure that it's binding and enforceable. This is going to save you a lot of time and a lot of money. It's something to point to actually have to hold your contractors accountable. I didn't do this with the first contractor, at least not good enough, and it really burned me. And on the next contractor, I made those contract corrections, and he was about 26 weeks past the completion date, and I had it in the contract each week over was $2,000 off his total, and by the end of the project that equated to $52,000. So that's called liquidated damages. I'll probably do another video on this in the future because it's that important, but for your understanding. And I have many more, but I'll save those for future videos because I could go on all day with the failures of this project, but it worked out, so we'll get to that. Had I known all these issues in advance, I probably wouldn't have gone through with the deal, but sometimes ignorance is bliss, It really led to all the growth in adventurous days, and I learned my limits because this one tested me, like skill-wise and mentally and emotionally, just dealing with the sustained stress that comes with all the problems and all the failures I faced during the deal. But like my college linebacker said, it would have killed a lesser man. But after all that, we made it through the project, even with difficulty at seemingly every turn. In the first couple of months since going live, the property's brought in about $40,000 and has been 65 to 70% occupied, and that's with Airbnb bust and the low season. So it's not making cash flow, but it's sustaining, and for the headaches of the property, it's far from a happy ending yet. But I found a good new hire in the property manager and the head housekeeper who handles all the guest relations, guest related and the maintenance related issues, and turns all the units, so she's got a balance there. She's been able to do all that and do it at a high level, and has been a silver lining with the property. And our PCB team rallied to get the property live by finishing up the punch list with the rehab, get the amenity stocks, and did the quality control and training for the new property. And as a business owner, great employees give you that confidence that you're really onto something. They buy into the mission of the company and spend their time to make it great and to be part of that growth. And it's been one of the most rewarding things to me, or one of the most rewarding things for me to see our team develop and become just absolute ballers at what they do. So now to the furnishing for the property. My designer Rebecca came out and did really great. Each unit is individually designed with its own theme, its own color palette. We have rooms like the dolphin and the starfish and the coral, and I spent about $6,000 per unit to furnish the property, including the washers and dryers and the outdoor furniture. And because we thought the property was going to be live in the summer of 2021, we bought almost all the furniture way too early, and it sat in Rebecca's garage and then in my garage in Florida and then in storage for about a year. Thankfully, none of it got ruined, sitting for so long, and was all usable for the go live. And that really worried me because it was all in boxes and I couldn't easily get to it to check on it. It was stacked like 6 feet high. So I risked it, and thankfully nothing was ruined. We did get some stuff stolen from a homeless guy, but that's going to be a story for another time. And the outdoor space also really came together nicely with the quality of the units, and I think it's going to continue to do well. I'm really happy with the final product despite the trouble it took to get there and the debt value I had to put on it to get all the money out. But the property sits in an area of Fort Walton Beach that isn't great. We did have some homeless people shack up in the property during the renovation when all the units were down, the windows were out, the doors were out. And we not so lovingly referred to them as Dirty Mike and the boys. But it's getting better. You know, it's really close. It's really close to good areas of Fort Walton Beach. The police station, the fire department, it's only 2 blocks away. There's a newer Class A multifamily property across the street, and a newly developed storage facility that was getting built as I was building mine that's just a block away. So there's money being put into the area, and it's in the path of progress. Plus, it's only 8 minutes to the beach. It's like 4 minutes to the downtown shops and the restaurants and the breweries and the bay where the boats and the charters come in and out. And it's only 3 minutes to shops like TJ Maxx and Starbucks and Publix. So it's a pretty good area. All right, let's get into the numbers. So here's the breakdown. The purchase price was $357,000. My rehab and my holding costs were about $611,000. Private money interest was $64,000. We spent $48,000 to furnish it. And then my refinance closing costs were $60,000, which is crazy. So this is like the legal fees alone were $25,000 thanks to the difficulty of the seller who carried the note. Plus we had 3 points for the loan broker and the lender fees. So all in, I was in for about $1,147,000 and some change. And the refinance was $1,050,000. And my all in with my own cash was $380,000. Let's talk about the appraisal. So that came in at $1.6 million. So the loan to value is about 65%. And after the refinance, I was able to pay off the seller finance note, all the private investors plus interest, and I got $172,000 of my own money back. So I left about $200,000 of my own money in the deal. And because of the high debt with the institutional hard money, which is really high interest, it's only set to cash flow about $15,000 to $20,000 over the course of a year. So my cash on cash returns only like 7 to 8%, and that's before taking into account the time value of money. Definitely the worst deal I've ever done financially and morally. But it appraised 1.6, so I have the equity, and that equity gives me options to sell or refinance, again, once the interest rates drop lower, or even open up a line of credit to be able to use that equity in another deal. So not a complete loss, and I'm exploring those 3 options now. All right, so that's Seaside Escape in a nutshell. So I'm hoping the rundown gives you an idea of what projects like this entail, how to prepare for them, and also that it's possible. Like in retrospect, I was way underprepared, but sometimes you have to make that leap and find a way through. Doing this project opened the door to start Adventure Stays, where we, identify and buy these underutilized hospitality assets like this and turn them into real cash cow boutique short-term rentals that have this really good feeling. So it's definitely worth it. And there's this hardening that comes with experiences like this. Like now I know that I could go do another project like this with a fraction of the trouble and get through it because I've been through it. The learning lessons that were happening real time also helped me manage our Adventure Stays hotel so much better. Like I wrote better contracts. I was a better project manager because what I was going through with Fort Walton Beach. So there's a confidence on the other side of that uncertainty. Not that I want you to jump into something that you aren't prepared for, because I don't, but hopefully this lets you know what to look for and makes you better on your next deal. Also, let me know what else you might be interested in about the project, like how we furnished it, how we created the listings, how we managed it, or how we funded it. Whatever you might find helpful, you can put those questions below and I'll try to answer them all the best I can. So thank you for watching the video, and don't forget to like the video so it can get pushed to someone else who can benefit from it, and subscribe for more breakdowns of the deals I've done and how we bought over $10 million of real estate and built this almost $3 million money-making machine of a business over the last year. See you next time.